If you think that people should be expected to rely on their own intelligence to be successful, work hard to be successful, some of the really crazy types say that wearing a watch is racist because being on time is anti-minority. I mean, isn't that so patronizing? But that's the way the left thinks. I mean, they pretend they're in favor of minorities, but they treat them like children, and they have contempt for them as autonomous moral agents blessed by God. They treat them like some sort of marker or piece to be moved around in their organization, their efforts to undo American society. And they'll be tossed aside as soon as they're not needed. We had some great news this week, or within the last week. I don't remember exactly when it happened. But you may remember back in July, Judicial Watch uncovered and disclosed to you documents about this outrageous anti-American, racial separatist, completely racist program being run in the Pentagon under the guise of diversity training or whatever you want to call it. It's generally called critical race theory, which is essentially a communist theory dressed up with all this identity politics dressing around it. It's anti-American. It targets people based on race. If you're not a minority, you're assumed to be evil and need to be broken down and undone. And if you're not in one of the so-called protected classes that they're concerned about, you are presumed to be evil as well. So it's a really this cultural Marxist, anti-American, race baiting, discriminatory training, and it goes on all the time in the government. And it was going on in the Pentagon, called teaching materials that they were teaching materials for the Defense Equal Opportunity Management Initiative, which gets millions and millions of dollars. I think they have a budget of $20 million between 2012 and 2017. The newly released records included a chapter entitled Power and Privilege, in which students are taught that privilege can also be linked to various forms of identity, such as sexual orientation privilege and religious privilege. The sexual orientation privilege is associated with the marginalization of non-heterosexual lifestyles and the view that heterosexuality is the normal sexual orientation. And this is just classic Marxism. The guide advises that some dominant group members may claim personal achievement. Mostly it depends on personal ability. So under critical race theory, if you suggest that traditional standards of success should be applied universally across races, creeds, and I guess gender identities, or whatever the term of art is for the left these days, you are part of the problem. Now, I looked at it, so if you think that people should be expected to rely on their own intelligence to be successful, work hard to be successful, some of the really crazy types say that wearing a watch is racist because being on time is anti-minority. I mean, isn't that so patronizing? But that's the way the left thinks. I mean, they pretend they're in favor of minorities, but they treat them like children, and they have contempt for them as autonomous moral agents blessed by God. They treat them like some sort of marker or piece to be moved around in their organization, their efforts to undo American society. and they'll be tossed aside as soon as they're not needed. Another activist over at the Discovery Institute, Mr. Rufo, he uncovered additional critical theory training programs at one of the national laboratories. The CDC was planning to engage, I think, in some sort of crazed 13-day or 13-week critical race theory program. Even after the president found out about all this, because he saw one episode of on Tucker Carlson. Well, I don't know if he saw it, but there was a lot of public pressure. Tucker Carlson covered it. Obviously, Judicial Watch has been pushing this issue for years. We've been seeing this garbage being pushed on federal employees. And of course, the president wants to shut it down. So the left is outraged because you can have, I guess, diversity training where you remind people you can't make presumptions based on race or the other protected categories. And that's easy to do. But here it's a Marxist communist philosophy that's anti-American and targets people, specifically, in this case, whites, as being evil because they're white, or being privileged because they're white. Now, in any sense of the law, in my view at least, that's discriminatory, absolutely discriminatory. So not only should be shut down in the government, but corporations pushing this garbage, schools and schools both for children and higher education pushing this critical race theory, they should also be held to account under law for pushing this discriminatory programs, for these pushing these discriminatory programs. So if you have an entire HR program geared at attacking a particular race because they're seen as dominant, how does that comport with our laws related to anti-discrimination and equal opportunity? It doesn't. So if I were the president, I'd get the IRS on the ball, EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, on the ball, the Education Department on the ball, the Justice Department on the ball, to shut these discriminatory left-wing programs down because they're illegal. They're illegal under discrimination laws, anti-discrimination laws. And it's just getting worse and worse. Now you have mainstream publications capitalizing the word black and the word white in talking about racial characteristics. Blacks and whites with capital B and capital W. That's straight out of apartheid South Africa, that sort of nomenclature and style. But that's what the left wants. So they pretend to be caring about race, but they are the racialists. I hate the term racist because that presumes some sort of, moral purpose or moral judgment that, I don't know if they're racist per se, but they're racialists, right? They want to categorize people by race, attack people by race, which is probably racist, as you well know. And they say they're opposed to segregation, but their entire political philosophy depends on segregation. And Judicial Watch has taken a step to try to protect those. And if you stand against it, especially on college campuses, and those of you who have kids and grandkids in college, you should know they are force-fed this stuff more often than not, unless they're blessed to go to a college that's sensible in areas like this.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all the latest news from Judicial Watch.